Hello, my name is Anya. I'm a 19-year-old student and climate justice advocate from the Philippines, hoping to see long-term change come out of this COP.
Hi, my name's Rory. I'm 24 and I'm from Belfast. I'm currently a policy officer for sustainable agriculture at the RSPB. As part of my role, I get to work on what I'm most passionate about, which is halting the biodiversity and climate crises and eating food. In my role, I want to transform the current food and farming systems by advocating for more regenerative farming practices and better access to sustainable, more healthy and local food. As part of my voluntary role as in the UK Youth Climate Coalition, I work as an organiser to advocate for systems change, tackling social and environmental injustices which are at the heart of the climate crisis.
Hiya, my name's Rob. I'm a conservationist, zoologist and science communicator, and I currently have the real privilege of living and working on the most northerly RSPB reserve in the country, RSPB Forsenard Flows, which is all concerned with the restoration of peatland, a vital resource for carbon storage.
Hello everyone, my name is Remy Zahiga. I am a climate activist from the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
My name's Kyra Barbutos, and since a young age of 9 years old, I've been fighting for a change in our ecosystem, in particular, Britain's favourite wild animal, hedgehogs.
I'm Kabir Kaul. I'm a conservationist, a wildlife writer, and I love to campaign for London's wildlife.
Hello, my name is Millie. I am one of the Conservation Skills interns currently at the RSPB Forsenard Flows Reserve up in the Highlands in Scotland. It's an incredibly beautiful landscape and so important when it comes to climate change. The peatlands here sequester carbon and store them, so making sure that our peatlands are happy and healthy is essential when it comes to fighting climate change.
Hi, I'm George, I'm 16 and I lived on the edge of Manchester in the foothills of the Pennines all my life. Now, on one side of where I live is the great city of Manchester, and on the other side is miles and miles of the wildest open moorland.
As young Filipinos, our first introductions to climate change don't come from science books or classrooms. They come from being 3 and not having water or electricity for days on end because of severe typhoons. They come from stories of our relatives having to cling to rooftops just so they wouldn't get washed away by storm surges. Climate change not only threatens everyone we love, it also threatens our entire futures.
Climate change is destroying the natural habitat and making difficult the access to clean water, is making difficult the agriculture. Climate change is forcing people for immigration, including human, birds, and other animals.
As a young person, the climate and biodiversity emergency is so relevant to me. It's our future that is being held in the hands of people that sometimes don't appear to care and don't seem to put nature as a priority when it comes to politics and making decisions. I feel so connected to my landscape and nature, but it's really hard to know what to do, and it can be very overwhelming sometimes.
For me, the climate and biodiversity emergency relates to me with right on my doorstep of the moors. Now, nature and humanity, we're not separate. We are relying on nature for everything that we have got. And sadly now, because of the position that we put nature in, nature is totally reliant on us to change the way we're going. Therefore, each and every one of us, me, you, my grandma, the bloke who works at the Chippick, we have got a moral obligation to help nature get out of this. Not just for our sake, but for nature's sake too. Because inevitably we need to change for nature to get better.
Well, I believe they're everybody's business and everybody's problem. They affect everything that I do, from eating, from travelling, how I work, and what clothes I wear. So I can't personally live in a world where my children and my grandchildren will have to worry about where their next meal comes from because our land has failed or that we've run out of pollinators. And I also don't want to live in fear of the next extreme weather, such as a heat wave or a flood. And I can't sit still knowing that those things are already such a reality to people around the world right now.
We need to put more effort into protecting people from vulnerable areas. This isn't just about plastic alternatives anymore. This is about displacement, poverty, the destruction of food systems, and the need for politicians to start choosing planet over profit.
Well, I hope that there are clear targets set out for all nations to reduce emissions significantly, like how they will actually halve emissions by 2030. With 92% of global emissions originating from the global north, I believe these nations need to do the heavy lifting to repair what they've done historically. I also want nations to put their money where their mouth is by making ambitious, real green recovery funds to invest in large-scale nature recovery plans and nature-based solutions to climate mitigation and adaptation. I also want to see commitments for transition in global food security. This is a global issue which reaches far beyond borders, and I hope that there's a whole world transition to regenerative practices immediately, with more representation from farmers themselves, particularly in things like the International Peasants Movement.
Decisions must include climate justice for the most affected areas and communities by providing them the necessary means, like supporting them financially and give them technology to mitigate the climate crisis and build resilience and adaptation measures. Also, the protections of our lands, our forests, Amazon and Congo rainforest and other forests. At the COP26, we must also include the respect of the indigenous people and facilitate them to participate in climate negotiations.
There are so many crucial decisions that need to be made this year at COP26. I really hope that the delegates will consider what's really important and make protecting our environment a priority. I think the delegates need to come together and see climate change not just as a national problem but as a global problem, and really set to right all the goals that haven't been reached at this COP, and make sure that as it comes on to next time, those goals will be reached and people are held accountable where they haven't been.
We just need to get on with it. We've been in this situation before where world leaders have shook their hands and said, we're going to save the world, we're going to make the world a better place. And they never do. COP26 needs to be a turning point where we say a little less conversation, a lot more action, please.
I would like to see a future where children only have to worry about homework and not about whether or not their schools would be underwater after the next storm hits.
Developed countries must take real actions on the ground to decrease their emissions.
The future I want to live in, ideally, would be a carbon-neutral society with emphasis on protecting animals, where big companies and countries step up and take responsibility for the climate. We all understand that the population is increasing and that we need to build houses. That in itself can't change, but the way we build these houses can.
I'd like to live in a world where we have greater emphasis on the rewilding and sustainability in our cities, as that's where most of us will be living in the future. We need more green walls, green roofs, and better maintenance of our habitats and ecosystems in urban areas. We need this as it will ensure that people can coexist with nature in urban areas in the long term.
How would I like to see the future? Well, I'd like to see the future where everything is balanced. Now, for me, everything that is wrong with the world is due to an imbalance, whether that's poverty, prejudice, environmental issues, and I'd like to see a world where everything is balanced and equal. Whether that's in nature, where everything's reliable, it falls at the right time of year, but also for the people. Because the climate emergency is about people as well. Because the poorer countries are inevitably the ones that are going to suffer from it more. It's all about inequalities.
I think like every young person, I want to live in a world where I don't have to worry about the future, where I don't constantly have climate anxiety about the sort of world we're going to pass on to future generations, and not have to constantly think, how are they going to look at us and generations before us and how we've treated this planet. I want to live in a world where there are no mass extinctions, no exploitation of the environment, and no mass habitat degradation. I want to live in a world where temperature rise is limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius, where CO2 emissions reach net zero, and where we can live in a world where we live with the world, not against it.
So the future I want to live in, by ending our unrealistic ideals of economic growth, I believe we can solve many problems simultaneously. By ending unsustainable consumption and production, we can give the planet and nature a fighting chance to recover. I want to see people and nature respected and allowed to thrive in our cities and our countryside. To see endangered species like curlew in abundance and people from every community, Black, Indigenous and people of colour, women and LGBTQIA+, who are disproportionately affected by these injustices, properly represented within the sustainable structures that we'll build, safe and prospering in a healthy world, free of climate change impacts and fear and discrimination.
Advocating for climate justice also comes from a place of privilege. While it might be easy for some of you guys to stand outside your parliament offices and call for climate justice, in some places it's not as easy, it's not as safe. We don't need anyone to give us a voice. We just need you to make it safe enough for our voices to be heard.
I think as a young person, it's very common for us to think that we're having to make up for all the mistakes that past generations have made. We get to hear all about the wonderful wildlife and the landscape as it once was in its natural state. And now quite a lot of the time we just see the destruction and we think we're the ones who are going to have to face the difficulties that come with this destroyed landscapes and unhealthy environment.
We all have the ability to do something for people and for the climate. Knowledge is power here, and there are people who have been fighting this good fight since the first COP in 1995. I believe through the right questions and the right answers, everybody can do their little bit for making real change happen.
There are so many beautiful plants and animals in the ecosystems of this world. They've given us so much over the years, and it's about time we gave something back. The planet deserves our protection, and if we don't do it now, when are we going to do it? If we don't do it now, the planet is lost. If we don't do it now, we are failing future generations.
It's an absolutely cracking song by the class called London Calling, and I've decided to reword it a little bit for the theme of COP26. Young uns calling to the faraway town, now war is declared and battle come down. Young uns calling all over the world, come out the suburbs you boys and girls. Young uns calling, look to us, if only petrol mania is bitten the dust. Young uns calling, see we got lots of swing, except for the collapse of the ozone ring. The ice age ain't coming, the sun is zooming in, meltdown is expected and the wheat is growing thin. Engines stop running, but I have some fear, because young uns are calling out and we live for our future.